Let's be honest. Most of us won't leave behind anything that lasts 300 million years. Not our selfies, not our shoes, not even that weird sandwich we forgot in the fridge. But fossils? Fossils are the VIP pass to immortality. The problem is, nature isn't handing them out easily. For something to become a fossil, the conditions have to be ridiculously specific. No scavengers, no decay, perfect pressure, and just the right amount of time. Billions of creatures have lived and died without so much as a trace left behind. So when we do find a fossil, it's like nature dropped a Polaroid from the past. Usually, it's something we can recognize, a tooth, a bone, maybe a funky looking fish. But every now and then, Earth throws us something else, something that doesn't belong anywhere. Something that makes scientists squint at it for decades and still go, "Bro, what even is this?" And that's exactly what happened when they found a boneless, trunk-snouted, eyeball-on-a-stick nightmare just vibing in prehistoric Illinois. Meet Tullimonstrum, easily one of the weirdest animals to ever get fossilized. And no, we're not exaggerating. Tullimonstrum gregarium, commonly called the Tully Monster. The name sounds like a cartoon villain, but the actual creature is far weirder. The first fossil was discovered in 1958 by a fossil enthusiast named Francis Tully. He wasn't a scientist, just a guy with an eye for strange rocks. He handed the fossil over to the Field Museum in Chicago, and from that point on, paleontologists had a problem on their hands. What Tully found didn't match anything in the books. It was soft-bodied, about 30 centimeters long, with two eye stalks that stretched out from the sides of its head. At the front of its body was a long, flexible snout ending in a claw-like jaw with tiny, sharp teeth. That mouth-on-a-stick feature is so specific and so bizarre that no one really knew what to make of it. And the strangest part? Dozens more fossils started appearing just like it all in the same region, perfectly preserved in ironstone nodules from the Carboniferous period. So what was it? Was it a worm, a mollusk, a fish, a relative of squids or slugs? For decades, the scientific community had no clear answer. Some said it was a vertebrate. Others said no way, it didn't have a backbone. Then someone pointed out it had a notochord, which is kind of like a primitive spine. But was that enough to make it part of the vertebrate family? Others focused on its eyes. They had pigment granules called melanosomes that are usually found in vertebrates. Still, no one could agree. It didn't help that this thing doesn't resemble anything alive today. You can't point to a modern animal and say, "Ah yes, this is its cousin. It's an evolutionary orphan." What we do know is that it lived around 300 million years ago in a shallow coastal estuary that is now the middle of Illinois. Back then, it was a warm, swampy environment filled with strange marine life. Giant insects flew overhead, early amphibians crawled in the mud, and in the water, Tullimonstrum swam, probably hunting soft-bodied prey, using its flexible proboscis to grab, grip, and gulp. It might have been transparent. It definitely didn't have bones, and if you were a small invertebrate floating nearby, you probably wouldn't see it coming. Imagine that, a creature with eyes on sticks and a mouth at the end of a noodle sneaking up on you. Nature really went off script here. Subscribe to Prehistoric Medievals if you're still with us, because what's coming next gets even stranger. Scientists thought they'd cracked the Tully Monster mystery in 2016. But just when it looked like the debate was over, new research flipped everything upside down again. In 2016, a team of researchers made headlines when they confidently declared that Tullimonstrum was in fact a vertebrate. They cited strong evidence, things like the presence of a notochord, gill structures, and even possible cartilage formations that resembled the internal anatomy of lampreys. For a brief moment, the mystery seemed solved. Headlines ran with it. The Tully Monster identified, they said. Scientists lined up to say it was finally time to close the book on one of paleontology's weirdest cold cases. But like all good prehistoric mysteries, that celebration didn't last long. Only a few years later, a separate group of researchers published new findings, and they didn't agree. They examined dozens of Tully fossils using different imaging techniques and pointed out that some of the earlier interpretations might have been wrong. What looked like vertebrate features, they argued, could actually be something else entirely. For example, the supposed gill pouches, maybe not gills at all, the notochord, could just be a gut trace. Even the eyes, once thought to contain melanosomes similar to those found in vertebrates, turned out to be ambiguous. Once again, the Tully Monster had slipped through science's fingers, back to square one. At this point, the creature feels less like a species and more like a prank from the fossil record. It doesn't belong anywhere, and that's exactly what makes it so fascinating. It refuses to be filed, categorized, or simplified. The more we study it, the more it reminds us how little we actually know about ancient life, especially soft-bodied animals, which almost never fossilize. That's part of what makes Tullimonstrum so valuable. It offers a rare glimpse into a part of prehistory that usually dissolves into nothing. We have thousands of fossilized bones from dinosaurs, reptiles, and fish, but something like this, preserved so well that even the eye structure is visible? That's incredibly rare, and yet, here it is, dozens of them, frozen in time inside stone nodules pulled from the ground in Illinois. To this day, the Tully Monster remains the official state fossil of Illinois, which is kind of hilarious when you think about it. Among all the things they could have chosen to represent the state, they picked a slimy, boneless deep-sea grabber with no clear evolutionary relatives. But honestly, it fits. It's weird, unique, stubborn, and hard to explain, much like the story of how this thing was even discovered in the first place. The fact that a regular guy, not a paleontologist, not a professor, just a curious fossil hunter was the one who found it, makes the whole thing even better. So here we are, decades later, still staring at the same weird little animal and still asking the same question: what exactly was this thing? Was it a one-off evolutionary experiment? A dead-end branch of something we haven't discovered yet? Or a reminder that the fossil record is just barely scratching the surface of everything that once lived on Earth? We may never know for sure. But one thing's certain, the Tully Monster isn't just one of the weirdest extinct animals ever discovered, it's one of the most persistent puzzles in paleontology. If you're into this kind of prehistoric madness, don't forget to subscribe to Prehistoric Medievals. Because next time, we're diving into something even stranger, and trust me, Earth's history doesn't disappoint.